Go ahead and call this meeting of the Frederick County School Board to order at 6 p.m. on June 21st, 2022. Mr. Monk has requested that the board allow him to participate in tonight's meeting electronically from Atlanta, Georgia, due to a personal matter. Specifically, he's participating in a National Student Leadership Conference. Is there a motion to allow Mr. Monk to participate electronically?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes. Mr. Monk will be joining us electronically. Thank you for your attendance this evening. If we could start with a moment of silence. Thank you. Right. Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us for this evening's meeting here in the boardroom. I'm Bradley Comstock, your vice chair, and in Mr. Monk's absence, I'll run the meeting this evening. Thank you for joining us here in the boardroom and through the live stream on the School Division's YouTube channel. Due to ongoing construction, the restrooms at the admin building are unavailable for use this evening. Those who need to use the restroom may utilize the facilities outside the doors to my right. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any amendments or changes to the agenda this evening?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. I make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Motion heard.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have an agenda before us. First up on the agenda is the closed session.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I move that the County School Board of Frederick County, Virginia enter a closed session meeting for the following: to review and discuss individual personnel matters, including appointments, resignations, and the evaluation of the superintendent pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711, 8.1, and to review and discuss individual student matters that would involve specific students and particular information contained in their scholastic records, including requests for release from compulsory attendance for religious reasons pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711, 8.2, and I do so move.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are in closed session. Welcome back. Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us for this evening's meeting here in the boardroom and throughout the live stream on the School Division's YouTube channel. Due to ongoing construction, the restrooms at the admin building are unavailable for use this evening. Those who need to use the restroom may utilize the facilities outside the doors to my right. If you would please join me by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr.
You need to
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Mr. Lake.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that the board reconvene from closed session.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open business requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were discussed in the closed session, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board.
We've heard a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lake,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Comstock,
Yes.
Mr. Hester,
Yes.
Mr. Atkins,
Yes.
and Mr. Monk.
Yes.
Mr. Vice Chair, we have two motions coming out. I move to approve the personnel actions as recommended by the superintendent.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Dr. Savant? The second motion?
We're going to go forward with this motion right here.
Releasing them from compulsory attendance. Students A through E,
Yes.
and then that one.
So we're in fact announcing this motion.
Mr. Light?
Hold on. Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the personnel actions with religious exemptions from student A, student B, student C, student D, and student E, and I do so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, if you would join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Edwards, have we already approved the consent agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, we have a consent agenda before us, including minutes from prior meetings, use of school property, and student trips. How would the board like to handle?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented, Mr. Vice Chair.
Motion presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. That brings us to the citizen and staff comment portion of our evening. The Frederick County School Board is pleased to receive public comments at each monthly meeting. In order to allow the board sufficient time for its other business, the total time allowed for public comment will generally be limited to 20 minutes. Individuals speaking to the board will be allotted 3 minutes. Those individuals representing groups or organizations will be allotted 5 minutes, with one representative per group. Upon recognition by the chairman, the speaker should clearly state his or her name, residing district, and the subject of their comments. All comments are to be addressed to the chair. The board will receive comments but will not respond to questions or engage in dialogue. This is an opportunity to be heard, and the board will refer any issues or concerns to staff or appropriate committees. The school board is committed to showing appropriate respect and courtesy to all citizens, and speakers are expected to show appropriate respect and courtesy to the board. Members of the audience are not permitted to interrupt the speaker or meeting by asking questions or making comments. School board meetings are tape recorded for the purpose of clarification and development of the official minutes. We have a few constituents and citizens who have signed up to speak this evening. Sharice Woodward.
I'm Sharice Woodward, and I'm speaking on behalf of FCEA President Shaniqua Williams in her absence. Okay. June represents a series of endings and a series of new beginnings. FCEA would like to thank you, those of you who are retiring for many years of service. That have provided students with the impact reaching far beyond our local community and extending past the Commonwealth. For those educators who have chosen to depart, FCEA wishes you well. As you know, the choices that were made were not done so in haste, and we hope that if you continue employment and education elsewhere, that you receive many opportunities and lifelong learning that is to come from that. School board members, tonight you will review a proposal for the Finance Committee related to the bonuses for Frederick County Public Schools employees. We strongly urge you to accept it as written, regardless of the employee future status. They served these students in an amazing way during the 2021-2022 school year. It should go without saying that as our representatives, all school board members should be consistent in working with improving relationships with the school board of supervisors. Working against the overall plan that leads to student success and community growth is counterproductive, further divisive, and otherwise detrimental to all stakeholders. Please think of the students, faculty, and staff when you are having conversations, as your actions or lack thereof will have a ripple effect that could outlast your tenure. To Dr. Savine, FCEA would like to thank you for the level of professionalism that you have maintained throughout the years. Your knowledge, passion, and forward thinking is of the highest value, and we appreciate your willingness to engage with the community members on a personal level, as many across our county took a great deal of interest in the school board budget this year. Speaking strictly from an educator perspective, this school year has felt extremely challenging. The continuous staff shortfalls, to the greater need to support students both academically and emotionally, to the varying public opinions about COVID, to the overwhelming feeling that no matter how hard we work, our school board seeks to make a difficult job even more impossible. Despite all, we have survived and our students have thrived. We appreciate every sacrifice experienced by all and hope that this summer affords moments of reflection and joy, as we have all earned it. We would like to encourage all members of FCEA and employees of Frederick County Public Schools to relax. Retirees, thank you for your dedication throughout the decades. We look forward to hearing of the newfound adventures and journeys taken. Additionally, stay informed. The world of education is constantly changing, and it is always best to have your own personal knowledge base of what is going on around you. School board members, we hope you will use this summer to improve relationships and seek strengthening relationships in our community. We look forward to welcoming students and staff back in 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Sean Tibbetts.
Hello. My name's Sean Tibbetts. I'm in Mr. Adkins' district. I'm here to talk about the FCPS local plan for the education of the gifted. As a parent who's just been through this process, I have 5 things I'd like to point out at the beginning that should be changed. 1, they should schedule parent meetings immediately following identification letters being sent home. 2, inform parents which days and times their children will be pulled from class so they can be prepared with a proper breakfast and a conversation about focus. 3, they should inform the parents of which assessment tools will be used so they can prepare for those tests, just like an ACT, SAT, or SOL. 4, all documentation and communication should be provided electronically instead of in the mail. We've already lost one of the really important pieces of papers. Can't find it. I don't think that's my time. Is that my time?
You've got a minute.
Wow, okay. So my daughter was scored in the 95th percentile for math. Not good enough for FCPS gifted program. Check her reading scores, 99th percentile, top 1% in the country. Not good enough for the FCPS gifted program because she didn't score high enough on the 15-point eligibility matrix. The problem with the 15-point eligibility matrix is it doesn't exist in the local plan. In fact, the local plan says specifically, quote, "The school division does not allow any single criterion to deny or guarantee eligibility for general intellectual gifted services." And that's exactly what happened to my daughter, and I'm sure has happened to hundreds of other children in our district. Other than that, there's standardized tests. The plan says that they will use the Kingor Observation Inventory. The denial letter said they use the Kaufman Brief Intelligence Test and the Wessler Individual Achievement Test, both of which have preparation materials available for them, just like an ACT, SAT, or the SOL. Please address the gifted program in our school system. We need more gifted kids identified, not excluded. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Karen Dredsky.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Chairman on the screen, board members, Dr. Sovine. I'm Karen Dredsky. I'm in the Gainsborough District, and I come with 2 requests for you this evening. Mr. Leake has heard at least one of them. The first one is that I would like to request that with all of our committees that the school board has, that we add a citizen to those committees. Two reasons. One, it gives you an opportunity to have a parent, and maybe in some cases it's two people. Maybe it's a citizen, a parent, or a grandparent who is concerned. And maybe, for example, buildings and grounds. Maybe we look for the ground, whoever the staff person is who manages the most difficult grounds or the largest, or who's been here the longest and given the most service and has the most knowledge. To be included in those committees, to kind of round them out a little bit. I would really like to see that, if possible. And the second thing comes from having gone to the RISE program's presentations, which my child is a part of. And afterwards, I saw Mr. Monk and I saw Mr. Lake asking the kids some questions, and it was very interesting to observe their body language and what they said and didn't say. And later on, heard my son make the comment that students didn't necessarily say what they thought because their teachers were around and they didn't want to have to worry about their grades being affected. And then that's not the first time I've heard that from students. And I was reminded of something when I was in school, and it was not here in Frederick County growing up, that I would love to see us implement for our high school students. When I was in high school, the last day of our classes, 15 minutes before class was over, the teacher picked up a manila envelope and asked for a volunteer from the students. He or she then proceeded to hand out paper survey forms and left the room. The students were able to provide anonymous feedback on their class and on their teachers. The volunteer then took and collected all of those, put them in the manila envelope, sealed it, and took it to the office for the principal. And I think that would be a really great way to make sure that all of our principals and our administration has an opportunity to really hear how our students feel about our teachers. It would also give the teachers feedback. We've got some really excellent teachers, and I think it would be really useful for them to hear the really good feedback. And teaching, just like every other profession, every other job, I'm sure we have some people who could use some improvement. And it would make sure that our administration is aware of those areas when that comes up, where a student might be afraid to say something because they're afraid of their grade or repercussions, et cetera. So those are the two requests that I have for you this evening to give consideration to, but I would like to see that done for our high school students. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy Scarborough.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Christy Scarborough of the Stonewall District. I'm here today to talk about your grievance process. I've complained about 2 of your Frederick County Public School employees, and both times I have been denied knowing the outcome of those complaints, as well as an opportunity to appeal the decisions made on those complaints. Vernon Bach has handled my complaints, and when asked for updates, I get told that I don't get to know anything past my initial complaint. Now, I've read your policies and I've read the Virginia Code sections that your policies reference, which, by the way, allow me an opportunity to appeal. So why is this administration denying me that ability? Do you mean to tell me that this administration takes complaints and then denies due process by refusing to let the person know the outcome of the complaint and an opportunity to appeal? Do you really expect the members of this community to trust this administration, the same administration that discriminated against many of its students, to then investigate themselves and in secrecy? How Kafkaesque of Frederick County Public Schools. You know, this sounds an awful lot like you take complaints, and after pretending to investigate, you just immediately toss those complaints into a paper shredder so that you can shield your buddies from taking accountability for their slip-ups. I'm here to tell this board that I want to know the status of my 2 complaints. I want my opportunity to appeal them, and I want you all to follow your own policies regarding due process and to those grievances that are made. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Christy Jett.
Hello, my name is Christy Jett. I'm a resident of Gainsborough, and I'm speaking regarding the recent, challenge working its way through the process regarding a 4th grade reading textbook. I want my children to be challenged by what they learn in the classroom. I think my children benefit from exposure to and education about other cultures. Whether we like it or not, our country's history is rooted in sometimes very damaging interactions with other cultures. Slavery, displacement of other peoples, but we've also produced some good things, religious liberties, and emphasis on personal freedom. An education about that history that offends no one is not much of an education. But I also try to imagine myself on the other side of the equation. And I think there's people in this room that probably don't want me picking the curriculum for their child any more than I want them picking the curriculum for mine. So as a parent of a rising fourth grader, and this is information for anyone else, any other parents that are concerned, I reached out to my school's principal and I asked, I said, what recourse do I have if the school board votes to keep the material as is, which was recommended by the lower committees? She clarified for me that the textbook module in question is part of a reading series. This means that it is intended to, the focus is on the child's reading skills, not the content. Therefore, the teacher can simply offer an alternate module for that student. The teacher can even choose to skip that module entirely for the entire class. That is up to the teacher's discretion. So at the end of the day, we all may have slightly different views about what should be taught in our schools, but that is why the schools have a process. The schools had several committees made up of parents and staff, and those committees all voted to keep the material as is. So listen to the parents on the two lower committees prior to this meeting that voted to keep the material as is. We should all remember that it is neither required reading nor required teaching. Thank you.
Thank you. That's everyone who has signed up. Are there any other citizens? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Board. Priscilla Bolito, thank you for giving me the last moment. I didn't sign up. Thank you for giving me a moment. Just to clarify, my son asked for an alternative reading assignment, and the teacher gave him an ultimatum and told him to do it or receive a 0. You can confirm that with Mr. Strong. Thank you.
Okay. Any other citizens? Yes, sir.
Board members, thank you for your service. The recent actions by the majority of the Board of Supervisors is driven by either ignorance on how school systems are funded or as an attempt to systematically discredit Frederick County Public Schools. To say, as did one supervisor, I can accept if mistakes were made, is condescending. Indeed, there are not mistakes made. Allocations of state and federal funds and costs change, as do line item expenses. School board is an autonomous body as codified in the Virginia Constitution. Such action by the Board of Supervisors prevents the school board from discharging its constitutional responsibilities. School board is not a department. It is not a committee of the Board of Supervisors. Any demands which put the school board in a subservient role to the Board of Supervisors should be dismissed and politely ignored. The school board, particularly its leadership, must stand up and push back and advocate for Frederick County Public Schools and reestablish its autonomy. To have the school board receive a spoon-fed-like revenue to operate cannot stand. Frederick County Public Schools is not a mom-and-pop operation running on daily cash flow. It is the largest employee of Frederick County. School board leadership must assert itself as an equal partner with the Board of Supervisors in representing the interests of our county. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of our citizen staff comments. We've already approved the minutes, so that takes us to the report section of the evening.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. It's my pleasure to present this month's superintendent's report. I would like to first congratulate the nearly 1,100 seniors who received their diplomas during commencement exercises at James Wood, Millbrook, and Sharando High Schools earlier this month. Each ceremony celebrated the outstanding achievements of the class of 2022 and included traditions held dear to each school. Thank you to everyone involved in the planning of these events. The ceremonies were live streamed by our extremely talented media team, and the videos of each ceremony will be made available on the school division's YouTube channel in the very near future. I also want to share that the members of the class of 2022 at our 3 high schools received nearly $5.5 million in scholarships combined this year. Certainly worth applause, yes. That total includes 70 scholarships totaling just over $83,500 that were presented by our Frederick County Educational Foundation. Certainly appreciate the support of our Educational Foundation. Also like to congratulate Millbrook High School rising senior Nick Hayden and Sharando High School 2022 graduate Ella Carlson for winning state titles at the Class 4A State Track and Field Championships earlier this month. Nick won the 800-meter race, while Ella won the state championship in the discus. Also, we'd like to congratulate our James Wood High School baseball team on the outstanding season, which ended with a loss to Hanover High School and the State 4A Championship. Throughout their playoff run, the members of the team showed outstanding grit and determination and represented our community exceedingly well. I'd like to share that there's a great deal of activity taking place at the former Robert E. Ayler Middle School this week as the facility plays host to the Catholic Diocese of Arlington Work Group. Over the course of this week, hundreds of students and adult leaders will be staying at the school and going out into the community each day to complete home repairs and other projects. Frederick County Public Schools last hosted the work group in 2020 when it was based at Frederick County Middle School. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Savine. That brings us to the Assistant Superintendent for Administration.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Savine, and members of the school board. My membership report for this evening is for enrollment from May 31st, 2022. Since my last report to you on April 30th enrollment, we have increased by 1 student to 13,987. And we have additions and withdrawal. We added 4 students at the elementary level, decreased by 4 students at the middle level, and increased by 1 student at the high school level, and this represents the net increase in enrollment by 1 student. The most notable change in enrollment since my last report was observed at the high school level by adding 6 students in 12th grade and decreasing by 5 students in 10th grade. There were no noteworthy changes in enrollment at any of our schools. And we still have, just a reminder, we still have several of our schools that are over-enrolled. We have James Wood High School at 112% enrollment capacity, Millbrook High School at 113%. Sharando is our highest at 119% of its enrollment capacity. Armo Elementary School at 112%. Bass Hoover at 105%. Jordan Springs Elementary School at 104%. And finally, Middletown Elementary School at 109%. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my update on enrollment. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Bach? Thank you, Mr. Bach.
Thank you.
Dr. Angelo, the Assistant Superintendent for Instruction.
Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Savine, I am pleased to be able to give you an update. For those of you who are on the board prior to November, you may recall that we applied for and received a grant from Virginia Department of Education about a year ago. It was a innovation planning grant. We also received separately the designation as being a division of innovation. And I'm going to give you an update on those two things. Do I need to?
I think Dr. Savine's presentation is probably still up. You'll have yours up.
All right, I'm going to attempt to function with two laptops here. Notes on one, presentation on the other. So just to give you a kind of an overview of what this means for us, the Innovation Planning Grant is really focused on the work of Greenwood Mill Elementary School and Admiral Byrd Middle School, focused in on problem-based learning, and you may recall about little over a year ago, Byrd Middle School did a presentation on their approach to problem-based learning, and you may remember students giving an explanation and the difference between problem-based learning and project-based learning. We're really focused on the problem-based learning, project being often too heavily focused on the activity and not enough on the learning and problem-solving experiences. These two things are aligned to Inspire 2025, certainly at each school, at Byrd and at Greenwood Mill. And we chose these two schools for this grant for two reasons. One, they're both working on the same thing, the problem-based learning. And the other, of course, is that Greenwood Mill feeds entirely into Byrd Middle School now with the shift in attendance zones. Thank you. Once Sailor opened up. Couldn't come up with a word. The other is the Division of Innovation designation, which does not come. The grant, by the way, is a 2-year grant. We received right around $42,000 for this year as a planning grant, and we have applied for it and won't hear back until August for the second part of that grant, which is another $42,000 for implementation for those two schools. The Division of Innovation designation is simply that. It's a designation. It does not come with a grant award. And that's really focused in on Jordan Springs, Frederick County Middle, James Wood High School, and then scaling up division-wide. And so really the focus of that, again, is around the work that we're doing with Inspire 2025. So we're going to talk about the Innovation Planning Grant first. This is broad strokes what the goals are of that grant, really for teachers and leaders to learn about and begin to apply that problem-based learning and connecting it to the portrait of a graduate. And one of the things that we're doing with the problem-based learning, if you've heard of design thinking is a concept where you look at the end user and you solve a problem based on the needs of the end user rather than what you think the solution of the problem should be. And then having students engage in meaningful and authentic learning experiences, and certainly ultimately increasing motivation for students and promoting self-regulation in students. So we've been busy, but in a different way than we anticipated being busy. We had mapped out plans to take some visits this past year. There's an organization called IDEO. I don't know if any of you are familiar with IDEO. It's it was started up by a gentleman named David Kelly, who leads the design school, D School at Stanford. And David Kelly, just to give you an idea of who he is and what he's done, designed the ball for the mouse. He was the one who came up with the idea of a seamless ball for the mouse. And his whole idea of design thinking is really to take a look at what is the need of the end user, as I just described. And he actually they design something, they bring people in, they let them try it out, and then they make adjustments based on that feedback. So that's kind of the approach we're taking. We were not able to go to IDEO, obviously, because travel was pretty well restricted and just challenging. And not just travel, but honestly taking people out of the buildings for an extended period of time in order to be a way to visit IDEO and get a sense of what that looks like in the real world and then bring that back to a school classroom. As you know, the substitute teacher challenge this past year really created a lot of vacancies without being filled. So we opted not to do that. Instead, we partnered with Goshen Post Elementary School in Loudoun County, which is what's called a wall-to-wall PBL school, problem-based learning school. So we visited that school. We also visited Harmony Middle School in Purcellville. And both of those schools, of course, one is an elementary, one is a middle. We did that by design because each of our schools that we're focusing on is middle and high school. And we took 2 separate days, 2 separate groups. So we all visited both schools, but on different days. And I was really proud of our teachers and our administrators going through, because rather than going in and taking a look and saying, okay, we see this, now let's bring that back to our schools, they looked at it with a critical eye. And they looked at it and said, you know what, this is great for what they're doing, and what they're doing is really important work, and it's really solid for kids. But we need to apply these concepts to our school community and the needs of our school community and our kids. And we feel like we can do it just a little bit differently. And it's certainly not a knock on what they're doing, because they're doing some incredible work and the kids are definitely engaged. But we need to look at our strategic plan and our, Inspire 2025 and our competencies. So I was really proud that it wasn't just, we're going to go look at these ideas and just bring them back and implement them, which would be the opposite of design thinking, right? So design thinking is really about looking at, this is our school community, these are our kids, and so this is what we're going to do differently, and really start planning and mapping that out. The other cool thing is, not only have our teachers been busy with this type of work, but our kids have too. Our teachers have already started implementing some of these concepts, and we'll go deeper in next year and broader and expand. So these are just some social media posts from the 2 schools, and this is just a sampling of what they've experienced. One of them is 4th grade students in Greenwood Mill. I'm just going to sort of go from my left to right. 4th grade students in Greenwood Mill working with 1st grade students to share with them how we can mitigate the effects of pollution within our own community. So it's authentic, it's here, it's close by, and it's 4th grade students sharing what they learned with the 1st grade students, which was really cool for those older students, and also really cool for the younger kids too. The next image over, some of you may have gone to the field day at Greenwood Mill Elementary School that occurred a couple of weeks ago. That was 100% planned and designed by 3rd grade students. And talking about, yeah, that deserves a woo. Talking about design thinking, they surveyed the students in the school, and their question was, how do we give students at Greenwood Mill Elementary School an experience they will remember forever? And so they could come up with some ideas, but that may not be what matters to the students in the school. And so they talked to other students, every grade level. They said, what would you like to see? What would you like to see? How can we make this really engaging and fun and interesting for you? And then they designed it. And they coordinated the whole thing. The only thing they didn't do that the teachers did was really organize the parent volunteers. But they researched the activities that they had heard about. They completed a fundraiser to raise money to get some things that they would rent, because they did rent some things. They actually built like a miniature golf, like they created their own miniature golf course behind the school. They took videos of themselves going through each one they wrote out the directions and how to go about doing it. They took video of themselves going through each station, and they pushed those videos out during their morning show so that everybody could see. It was like a teaser for what was to come, but it also was instructive to the younger kids, so this is what you're going to be doing. Totally designed and implemented by 3rd grade students. And let me tell you, I was there. I'm not sure if anybody else was there. I know Dr. Savine attended. And to talk to the kids, they were so pumped about that experience. And the teachers were too. The teachers had a lot of fun. The next image is, I believe it was 2nd grade students who created a crazy crayon, I think is what it was called. They designed it, they created it, they made it, and then they were selling it. And they decided as a group to take the money that they had raised and donate it to a local community charity that they hadn't, I don't know that they've identified or had identified what that was by the time I put this together, so I'm not sure what it was, to be honest with you. And then at Byrd Middle School, they created a community garden. They partnered with the garden club locally, and they researched what would be the right thing to grow, how to make sure that that doesn't get, my big challenge, eaten by rabbits. And they actually built a raised bed. They designed it, they built it. You can see them doing that in the one image. And then they planted. And then the last image there is a salad with the vegetables from the community garden. So it was actually used. So all experiences that students had they were learning the content. They were also learning how to problem solve. They were learning how to work together. They were learning how to recognize sometimes when your idea isn't the one that is chosen as the idea, and how to manage that. So some sort of coping skills, and just really, really good experiences for the students, and some good community partnerships as well. So next steps for the innovation grant. We have, through research, and I can't say we, it was actually the instructional technology coach at Byrd Middle School, identified a couple of different options for how to move forward with some professional learning around PBL, and actually found a gentleman who does PBL by design, so really truly combines problem-based learning with design thinking. And we're going to, the site licenses are very inexpensive. We're using grant funding, no local money at all, to pay for these site licenses, and the teachers will have access to those voluntarily. If they do it over the summer, we'll pay them a certain amount of money for doing that based on how many they watch. And then we're looking at engaging with this individual through the school year to maybe come out and do some direct professional learning, and then walk into classrooms and give feedback on application of that. So we're excited about that. The other thing is we're looking at engaging in lesson study, where we will provide release time, again, through grant funds. We'll provide release time, and teachers will be able to plan together. And what we're really looking at, and what teachers have told us that they would like to be able to do, is across levels. So Byrd teachers collaborating with Greenwood Mill teachers, sitting through and giving feedback on the planning process, and then going in and actually observing, watching what's happening in the classroom based on what that planning is, and providing feedback and having some reflective conversations afterwards. The teachers and the leadership team there are very excited. And then we're looking for organizations that apply design thinking locally. We know we can't travel too far. Still, with the substitute teacher question mark, we don't want to be away that long out of the building. So we're looking for opportunities locally that we can actually see design thinking in action. So that's next steps for the innovation grant. The Division of Innovation, I won't read these goals to you, but you can see they're very similar. That's by design, because this is completely focused on the work around Inspire 2025, so certainly we don't want to do something that's off the beaten path from our strategic plan. So these are some of the things. This is not planning, this is actually implementing. So the two primary pilots for this year, Frederick County Middle, the NEXT program, and James Wood High School, the RISE program. And so many of you, and it was referenced this evening, I actually appreciate that feedback. That's something that we can talk with the teachers about and try to see how we can get feedback from students in a different way. But the RISE showcase presentation, they had a couple of those this school year, and the most recent one was in May. That was a culminating project. And just amazing what the kids have really researched and taken a deep dive into, and they did it independently on their own, really exploring what their passions were, based on their interest. But they pulled the content from the entire year, aspects of the content from the entire year in. Below, the bottom picture is one of the earlier RISE showcase presentations. And then on the far right, my far right, is the next project, which is the Frederick County Middle School project. That's a blend of 7th and 8th grade students, and those are examples of their learning showcase evening that occurred just a couple of weeks ago as well. But this is the beauty of this. We talked about scaling up in the division. So there are also 2 images there of professional learning, one with administrators and one with teachers, because we were really focusing in, and you may remember, we put out an invitation. It was voluntary for teachers, just invited people to be part of this, and we had no idea how many we were going to get. And we got 177 teachers who came 4 times throughout the year for a half-day professional learning session. And got very, very good feedback on that, which was actually anonymous. And so we feel like the feedback we got, and when I say very good feedback, I don't mean it was all 100% positive. I mean, we got really good feedback that will help us with next steps, very actionable feedback. And it's not, what we're talking about is not just happening at Jameswood High School and Frederick County Middle. And there is an image in there of Apple Pie Ridge Elementary School, which is also engaging students in this way. Not part of the focus, but it is certainly doing the good work. And so that's like a market to market. The students invented something, they created it, and then they sold it market to market using like paper money, not real money, but paper money. So it's happening in other places, not just at those 2 schools. So our next steps. This is part of the feedback that we received. We have really recognized that our teachers want to inspire the learning of other teachers. And we've had informal conversations with teachers about, so next year, when we try to engage another group of students, or another group of teachers rather, in this work, would you be interested in being part of that in any way? And we have had a number of teachers who have said, I would love to do that. I would love to plan. People giving us feedback about, I have ideas about how this could have gone differently and been more meaningful for our teachers, and I want to be a part of that. Some people are interested in planning that work, but not necessarily really working directly and implementing that professional learning. Others would like to do both. Some have indicated what they'd like to do is go into classrooms and do what we were talking about at Greenwood Mill and maybe provide some coaching and support to teachers as they try to do this work. So they want to be involved, and if our teachers want to be involved supporting other teachers, we are definitely going to take them up on that. So we're excited about that. So that's the next steps for Division of Innovation. And I don't know if you can see the quote in that green dot. That is a 2nd grade student from Apple Pie Ridge Elementary School. And it says, I learned, and I'm going to hope that I can read this from here, I learned that I could actually learn about a topic by making my own learning choices without my teacher telling me. That is a 2nd grade kid. That's what we're after. That's motivation, right? So very excited about forward movement and where we're going. And I just want to say, I shared this presentation with the 4 principals who are the focus of the grant and the designation. And I said, you know, I want you to share this with the teachers that were involved in this, because you guys should be, I mean, really have reason for pride. In a really, really tough, very challenging year, a year where they were covering classes on their planning, they were planning outside of the day, lots of difficult situations that arose this year, and they didn't blink, as Glenn always says. They didn't blink. They kept moving, and it's just, it really says something about the commitment to our students when, even in the face of all those challenges and stress, our teachers and our school leaders kept going forward because it was the right thing for our kids. So just want to give a shout out, not just to those 4 principals certainly, but to all of them, because in some way all of them were engaged in this work. Mr. Vice Chair, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer and respond to any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Angelo. Any questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Vice Chair, sorry about my voice, everybody. Me and the CPAP machine didn't get along. So, anyway, when I was running and all the project-based learning and design learning was coming out, it really motivated me because that's just one of the big things that I really appreciate is we're taking this and putting it into real-life scenarios. Golly. These kids are going to end up having to work with other people in the communities. They're going to have to, like everybody else out here, try to figure out how to solve problems in one way or another. And I think it is a way to keep those kids engaged rather than just sitting behind a desk. So I want to applaud you and the rest of the staff for actually getting this involved or implemented. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
May I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I think that this creative learning, basically is what it is fantastic. And I truly appreciate the ones that built their own beds to raise vegetables in. I think that's something that needs to come back to the community so that our own community can provide for itself. And learning this process with children is tremendously important. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, appreciate that.
Any other board members? Dr. Angelo, thank you. Thank you for you and your team's work on this, and more importantly, thank you for supporting and allowing our teachers. I know that our teachers, and I think anyone up here would agree, our teachers have a lot on their plate, and sometimes they feel like it's everything they can do to just get through the day and get everything that they're supposed to done, and that they have to done. So empowering our teachers and giving them the opportunities and the freedom to do these things, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
I appreciate that.
All right, seeing no unfinished business, we'll move into new business. Items A, B, and C, if the board has their packet with them, these are all bylaw changes. And Mr. Edwards, any comments on those? I know that this is a first reading, so we wouldn't take action on these until next month. However, just administrative changes, as I was looking through, I didn't see anything substantial.
Yeah, that would be my only comment. The rationale or the reason for these proposed changes is included in the memo. I think in all cases, it's as a result of a change in code due to action by the General Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. I think if any board members were to, if you would please, at some point before the next meeting, review those and be in a position to take action on them. If you do have any questions or comments about them, please reach out to Mr. Edwards in the chair prior to the next meeting with that. Policy items D, agenda items D through H are all policy items. And the board, if you have your packet with you there, we would be in a position to discuss and take action on those if the board is so ready. So starting with policy 217P, administration, non-discrimination. If you have that one up, any questions or comments regarding that one, or what's the pleasure of the board on that one?
So just for clarification, this is the first time we've seen this. This was not out of committee, right?
Correct. These were
Okay.
ones that did not exactly fit into one of the committees necessarily.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we suspend rule for a second reading on policy 217P, administration, non-discrimination, and pass as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Since it's not a bylaw, we don't have to, do a second reading, so we don't have to suspend. We can just proceed with adopting it.
Mr. Edwards?
That's correct, yes, sir.
It's only the 100 series.
That would only
No
be,
second?
I'm sorry?
that's only for bylaws.
Bylaws require a first and second reading. At the board's discretion, it may adopt all other policies aside from bylaws the first time it comes to the board. So there's no need to suspend the rules. There's no rule that requires a first and second reading for anything other than a bylaw. So your motion could be simply to adopt if that's the desire of the board.
Okay, good. All right, Mr. Vice Chair. I move that we accept policy 217P, administration, non-discrimination.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that policy? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we accept policy 221P, administration, school crisis, emergency management, and medical emergency response plan.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we accept policy 224P, administration, threat assessment teams.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we accept policy 603P, appendix, community relations, requests for public records.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And finally, Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we accept policy 727P, operations and finance, school service providers' use of student personal information.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? And the motion carries. Mr. Hester, are you ready?
You guys are going to get sick of me for the next about 10 minutes, but yes, I am ready to go. The Finance Committee met at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building on May 10th. The meeting was called to order at 4:30 p.m., and a copy of the minutes has been provided to each board member. During the meeting, Mrs. Camry reviewed a recommendation to award a contract for HVAC improvements at NREP at Cincinnati Road School and stated coronavirus funds will be used for the project. Dr. Savine updated the committee on work being done to identify and bring forward a recommendation for a meaningful bonus for all employees prior to the end of fiscal year 2022. He also highlighted the possibility of having funds available to support a pay differential for special education teachers, speech therapists, special education instructional assistants, behavior specialists, and behavior instructional assistants depending upon the availability of state funds. Mrs. Camry reviewed the appropriation approved by the Frederick County Board of Supervisors on May 4th and the priority of projects which are to be completed through the Capital Projects Fund depending on the amount of state funds made available. No local funds were appropriated for the Capital Projects Fund in FY23. The meeting adjourned at 5:21 p.m. Additional details regarding the information covered at the committee meeting are included in the minutes provided to board members. Are there any questions from board members about information shared at the Finance Committee meeting held on May 10th?
One question. Sorry, I got to whisper in this thing again. Did we ever find out if there's any state funds or what that's going to look like at this point?
Just to be certain I'm clear, are you talking about state funds for capital projects? Yes. We're working through those details now,
Okay.
and we'll follow up.
Appreciate it.
Any other?
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair, there were 2 action items that came out of this meeting. Recommend awarding a contract valued at $2,298,000 to Paramount Mechanical Corporation as a result of IFB 22006, NREP HVAC improvements.
We have a motion before us.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Okay. Instruction Committee.
Your minutes.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself of my novel I've got up here. Recommend approval of the minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on May 10th, 2022.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. The Instruction Committee met at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building on May 19th. The meeting was called to order at 4:05, and a copy of the minutes has been provided to each board member. During the meeting, Dr. Angelo reviewed Regulation 304-C, Instruction, Steps for Reconsideration of Educational Materials, and the process used to address a request to reconsider HMH Intro Reading Grade 4, Book 1. Dr. Angelo reported a school-level committee comprised of 4 parents and 3 staff members reviewed the book and heard from the parent who made the request. The committee voted 6-1 to retain the book. After the parent who requested the book be reconsidered appealed the school-level committee's decision, a division-level committee that included 7 parents and 6 staff members held 3 meetings to review the book. The parent presented her concerns to the committee, and 2 local professors with experience in literacy acquisition also met with the committee. Dr. Angelo reported the division-level committee voted 7-6 to retain HMH Intro Reading Grade 4, Book 1 as a resource. Dr. Angelo also shared the publisher of the textbook was not aware of any request to reconsider the text in any other school divisions. In addition, he noted 33 other school divisions in Virginia use HMH Intro Reading Grade 4, Book 1, and none have received any request to reconsider the text. Dr. Angelo also stated these committee members who recommended modifications be made to the text supported not using 2 specific stories that are included in the book. Dr. Angelo also informed the committee that teachers are not required to use the text in its entirety. Additional details regarding the committee meeting are included in the minutes provided to board members. Do board members have any questions about what was covered at the instruction committee meeting held on May 19th?
No questions, but I do have a comment. So during our committee meeting, we discussed this, and it does look pretty clear that, at the school level where it was 6-1, and then we get parents involved, and now it becomes 7-6. So there is a growing number of parents who think this book is inappropriate, and they're with the 2 folks that we brought in from the local college, the literacy experts. They're not the literacy value of this book was not in question. The content was. This is a 4th grade book, and we're actively, in my opinion, teaching how to be racist. I work primarily with Hispanic folks. I took this to work and asked them their opinion on it. And that's exactly what they said. They said, we're teaching kids in 4th grade how to be racist. I said, look, I'm all about taking a book and let's teach the kids. Let's teach them about whatever. But this is a 4th grade literacy book. This isn't a social studies book. This isn't some kind of social experiment book. This is a literacy book. That's what we should be teaching these kids. If you want to teach them any of your values at home, hey, great. But that's not what the school's made for. So I voted to modify this and take out those 2 stories. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. I read the book in its entirety from cover to cover to include the appendix. This text is incredibly valuable. There was even in the appendix phonetic assistance and how to pronounce things phonetically. In addition, I purchased the We Are Latinos book, supplemental to the module, and also very helpful. Mr. Atkins, I also did utilize the assistance of people that I work with from Latin America, and I do host a Latin American in my home, and I took the liberty to interview her specifically, in addition to my colleagues. I took the liberty to reach out to an associate professor at Shenandoah University, who is the associate professor of Hispanic Studies. They let me know that this is a lived experience of people in our nation. It's important to tell these stories. Furthermore, there was an additional literacy expert that weighed in on this and was very, very well aware of this text. It's very helpful. finally, I took the liberty of reaching out to the Virginia chapter of Federation of the Blind, and while they were a little taken aback by a story about a blind individual, written by a blind individual, they again stated that these are lived experiences by people with disabilities and people that identify as Latin Americans, Chinese Americans, and it's very important that we tell these stories.
Thank you. I think, did the committee recommend action on that specific item? I think, are there any other questions from the board regarding specifically what happened in the meeting? And then I think we'll get into a deeper conversation on this one before the board votes. Okay.
There were 2 action items that came out of the committee report. First, recommend retaining HMH intro reading grade for book 1.
So we have a motion to retain that material from the committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion regarding that? I know we've heard a little bit of that already. Any further discussion regarding that material and the vote to retain that material?
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'll be brief. I know Mr. Atkins and Ms. White have shared their perspective on this, and was able to review what happened in the instruction committee, and believe that with modification, we could do some work to limit some of the division that this book may so I would support the modification piece, but couldn't support keeping it in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any other comments from board members? Yes, sir.
We did discuss this at the committee level, and I just want to reiterate that we do have a process for this, and it went through the full process, started at the school level. The parent appealed, which is their right, and it came to the administration level, and it went through the process. We have processes for a reason, and so I just wanted to reiterate it, that there was nothing, outside the norm, and it went through the process, and at the end of the day, both committees recommended keeping the book.
Thank you,
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes, sir.
Well, it hasn't went through the process because we're not through the process. We are the final component to the process. So, no, we are the elected officials who represent our communities. I've got people man, this voice thing's terrible. But I've got people reaching out to me saying, this is bad news, and this is where everybody's coming up with CRT light, equity, all this other stuff, and it's sowing division in the community. I'm all about, hey, the experts say it's a great book for literacy. Awesome. Let's keep it with modifications.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Dr. Angelo, may I ask you a question? An instructional question. If a student or parent even were to request that their student be exempted from having to use a certain material, is there a procedure in place for that, and what should that look like?
Yeah, they should request that through the school, through the teacher first, and then to the principal. We have that routinely at certain levels. I'll give you an example. Edgar Allan Poe, which is typically there's a story used in middle school, and often when I was a middle school principal, we had, probably one parent per year who said, I don't want my child reading that. And we just provide an alternate material, and we would do the same. And I'm sorry that Mrs. Belito had that experience. No,
I'm sorry, Mrs. Belito, I'm sorry.
And we will make sure that we would communicate that out to principals so they're fully aware of that. But yes, they would have the opportunity to opt out to a different resource for those specific stories. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that we have a motion before us. I'll offer my 2 cents before we vote. Mrs. Belito, I appreciate your passion for taking care of and protecting your children. Mrs. Belito, thank you. What I'm reminded of is, you probably don't want to hear my story, a situation in 6th grade when I was a student where we were learning about Greek mythology, and I was so firm in my beliefs of Christianity that I didn't want to learn about Greek mythology, and tried to get out of the assignment, and my mom actually wrote a letter, and anyways, turned into a whole big deal. I know this is slightly different, but I guess what I'm getting at is, I think learning and looking at other perspectives is not a harmful thing if it's presented in the right way. And if a parent makes that decision, which in that case my mom did, makes that decision to have their child excused from a particular thing that they're not comfortable with, if the system has failed you in that regard, then I think that's a different conversation that we escalate properly after administration to Mr. Bach and Dr. Angelo. So I think moving forward, I don't think it's in the best interest of our division to start limiting materials and removing materials. I don't think that's our place. Especially this is a material that is on the state-approved list, and so I think there could be benefit for some people to have exposure to that. So that's my 2 cents, but I think we're ready to vote. So all those in favor, yes, sir. Let's do a roll call vote, and just as a reminder, this vote is to retain that material in its fullness within our division. Yes, ma'am. So we'll do a roll call vote, and
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
No.
Mr. Comstock?
yes.
Mr. Hester?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
No.
Mr. Monk?
No.
The motion carries.
Okay, second action item, recommend approval of the minutes from the instruction committee meeting held on May 19th, 2022.
We've heard a motion. Is there
Second.
And a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's one of the instruction committee. Mr. Hester.
Okay. The instruction committee met at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building on May 26th. The meeting was called to order at 4:10 p.m. and a copy of the minutes has been provided to each board member. During the meeting, Supervisor of School Counseling and the English Learners Program, Sylvia Restivo, reviewed the Title III Part A application. The grant is estimated to be $100,606.14. Director of Elementary Instructional Services, Jerry Swager, reviewed the plan for Title I Part A. That grant is estimated to be $1,754,881.12. Director of Student Support Services, Teresa Rittenauer, reviewed the Title I Part D plan. That grant is estimated to be $71,916.92. In addition, Supervisor of Social Studies and Health and Wellness, DJ Cavalier, reviewed a recommendation to adopt Glencoe Teen Health as a textbook for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade health, and the Glencoe Health as the textbook for Health 1. The books were provided for community members and parents to review from March 28, 2022 through April 14, 2022, and received no negative comments. The total cost of the textbook adoption is $342,671.76, which is under budget. Finally, Supervisor of Science and Visual Arts, Kelly Atkin, reviewed the textbook recommendations for high school science courses. The recommendations included Virginia Miller and Levine Biology for Biology 1 and Honors Biology 1, Campbell Biology 12th edition for AP Biology, Essentials of Human Anatomy and Physiology 13th edition for Biology 2, Theory and Applications, Human Anatomy and Physiology 11th edition for Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2, Pearson Chemistry for Chemistry 1 and Honors Chemistry 1, Chemistry AP edition, 10th edition for AP Chemistry, Inspire Earth Science for Earth and Space Science 1 and Honors Earth and Science and Space Science, Essentials Physics for Physics 1 Theory and Applications in Physics 11th AP edition for AP Physics 1 and 2. Dr. Atkins stated that books were provided for community members and parents to review from March 2, 2022 through March 30th, 2022. The total cost of this textbook adoption is $533,002.12, which is under budget. Additional items regarding the committee meeting are included in the minutes provided to board members. Do board members have any questions about what was covered at the instruction committee meeting held on May 26th?
Woo. That was a big one. Any motions coming from that committee meeting?
Give me 1 second. There were a couple action items that came out of this. Recommend approval of the Title III Part A application.
We have a motion before us.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? And the motion carries.
Recommend approval of the Title I Part A application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Recommend approval of the Title I Part D application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Recommend the board adopt Glencoe Teen Health for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade health and Glencoe Health for Health 1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Recommend the board adopt Virginia Miller and Levine Biology for Biology 1 and Honors Biology 1, Campbell Biology, 12th edition for AP Biology, Essentials of Human Anatomy and Physiology, 13th edition for Biology 2, Theory and Applications, Human Anatomy and Physiology, 11th edition for Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2, Pearson Chemistry for Chemistry 1 and Honors Chemistry 1, Chemistry AP edition, 10th edition for AP Chemistry, Inspire Earth Science for Earth and Space Science 1 and Honors Earth and Space Science, Essential Physics for Physics 1 Theory and Applications, and Physics 11th AP edition for AP Physics 1 and 2.
It's a mouthful. We've heard the motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Recommend approval of the minutes from the Instruction Committee held on May 26, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Can I get a drink of water real fast?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
You've been busy.
Have been. Okay. The Instruction Committee met at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building on June 14th. The meeting was called to order at 4:30, and a copy of the minutes has been provided to each board member. During the meeting, Director of Elementary Instructional Services, Jerry Swager, reviewed the Title II Part A plan as well as a plan to transfer the grant amount from Title IV Part A into Title II Part A. Dr. Angelo and Mr. Bach then reviewed proposed updates to a number of policies and noted that the proposed changes were recommended to either better align the policy with the Virginia School Boards Association boilerplate policy or due to changes in the Code of Virginia. With regard to Policy 306P, the committee asked staff to make some revisions to what was presented at the committee meeting, and a copy of those adjustments are in your packet. Additional details regarding the committee meeting are included in the minutes provided to board members. Do board members have any questions about what was covered at the Instruction Committee meeting held on June 14th?
I think we're good.
Okay. We have several action items that came out of this committee meeting. Recommend approval of the Title II Part A application.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Recommend approval of the Title IV Part A application.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
We haven't
opposed?
even started yet. Recommend adoption of Policy 303P instruction, school calendar and school day.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this one? All right. All those in favor? Aye. All
Rec-
opposed?
Recommend adoption of revised Policy 306P instruction organizational plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Recommend adoption of Policy 332P instruction, college and career readiness.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Recommend adoption of Policy 410P student absences, excuses, dismissals.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Recommend adoption of policy 427P, students' relations with law enforcement and officials.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Recommend adoption of policy 432P, students' minute of silence.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Recommend adoption of policy 437P, students' administration of medications to students.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Finally, but not least, recommend approval of the minutes from the instruction committee meeting held on June 14th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Hester.
I'm sorry to interrupt here.
Yeah.
410P went by a little quickly. Part of that policy was for the board to make a recommendation on the number of excused days for 4-H. What we had proposed to board members in the committee was 1 day, and providing principals the flexibility and latitude, should there be more days, that they would have the flexibility to go beyond that.
And we did discuss that in, at the committee level.
I think,
Do we need,
to Mr. Bach's point, I think we left the number of days blank. And
Oh,
so I
correct.
think we
We
just
did.
want to make sure
Yes,
that we're
sir.
clear that the board's intent in adopting that is to include 1 day.
And
As
that's
was
what we
recommended at the
included
committee
was.
level.
Okay, my apologies. Just wanted to make sure.
No.
should we redo that motion
we
with
do-
including
No,
the number?
I think we're fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hester. Next up, we have a joint committee and personnel committee report. Joint, finance.
Last but not least.
Here we go.
The Joint Finance and Personnel Committee met at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building on June 14th. The meeting was called to order at 5:15, and a copy of the minutes has been provided to each board member. During the meeting, Mrs. Reinholm presented a staffing update and reviewed current vacancies as well as the vacancies that have been filled. Mr. Bach reviewed proposed increases to facility use fees. He stated there has been no increases in the fees for at least 8 years, and the proposed increases would be more in line with the facility use fees charged by the Frederick County Parks and Recreation Department. If approved, the new fees will go into effect on July 1st. Mrs. Camry reviewed the FY23 school operating fund by category and the variances which led to the Frederick County Board of Supervisors not approving the operations, maintenance, facilities, and technology categories. Mrs. Camry noted that if action to approve the categories is not taken by the Board of Supervisors prior to July 1st, the purchase orders funded through those categories will be canceled and the employees paid from those categories will essentially be laid off. Dr. Savine presented the committee with a recommendation to provide staff bonuses prior to the end of FY22. Dr. Savine stated that implementing a spending freeze as well as a higher than normal vacancy savings will allow for a substantial bonus for all employees. He also noted the criteria for bonuses, bonus amounts of $2,000 and $1,000. The total cost of the bonus initiative is approximately $4.6 million. The committee also received information from Mrs. Anderson regarding the Virginia Public Schools Authority Educational Technology Resolution, as well as a recommendation to award a contract valued at $497,586 to Don Largent Roofing Incorporated for the roof replacement at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building. Additional details regarding the information covered at the committee meeting are included in the minutes provided to board members. Are there any questions from board members about information shared at the Finance Committee meeting held on June 14th? We do have several action items that came out of this meeting. First one is to recommend approval of the proposed facility use fees.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
The second one, recommend approval of the staff bonuses as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and 2 seconds.
You got him, Mike.
Any discussion regarding this one? We'll do a roll call with this one, but any discussion prior to? I would just like to thank Dr. Savine and staff for the work on this one, and thank our staff especially for this. This is a small token. I wish that we could do more. We are very appreciative for all of our staff at every level. We're lucky to have you. You are, you're the only way we can do what we do and support the community in the way that we do and the children of this community. So, yes, sir.
Would just echo those comments. I think in education, there's something that everyone on this board, at least from my individual conversations, agreed with, and that's that education's a people business, and really thankful for the opportunity, Dr. Savine, to be able to find some funds to be able to support our staff in this way.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Edwards?
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Comstock?
Yes.
Mr. Hester?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins, I don't think we heard you.
Sorry. Okay. Third action item was to recommend adoption of the resolution of the County School Board of Frederick County, Virginia, declaring its intention to reimburse itself from the proceeds of one or more grants made by the Commonwealth of Virginia for certain expenditures made and or to be made in connection with certain capital improvements.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next action item, recommend awarding a contract valued at $497,586 to Don Largent Roofing Incorporated for the roof replacement at the Frederick County Public Schools Administration Building.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion regarding this one?
Roll call.
And we'll do a roll call vote here. Mr. Edwards?
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Comstock?
Yes.
Mr. Hester?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Final action item, recommend approval of the minutes from the Joint Finance and Personnel Committee meeting held on June 14th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Hester, you can breathe now.
I'm done.
All right, next up on the agenda, selection of delegate and alternate delegate for the VSBA 2022 Delegate Assembly.
If I may, I'll just describe this and then see if there's any takers. I've done this for about the last 8 years, I guess. The Delegate Assembly is one member from every school board in the state, 132 different boards. We meet in Williamsburg the third week of November, just before Thanksgiving. And on Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock, 132 delegates, one from each, come together in one big boardroom. And we are provided a notebook about a month or a month and a half beforehand of all requested changes, additions, deletions, edits, wordsmithing, and anything that any of the 132 school divisions have done for policy throughout the year. And I expect to see this year probably some policy about school resource officers. Probably going to see some policy about curriculum. It's been a hot topic. Probably going to see some clarification about the other hot topics like critical race theory and all that. And so that's what's happening. This is the opportunity each year that a school division has to make a change to some existing policy that we have about 90 in our policy book. And that comes from the state level. And what we're doing is throwing it out to the state and then to the rest of the delegates. And so what we do, we get together and we go through these policies one by one in the delegate assembly, and all 132 members vote. And it is a majority rule, whether or not, say, a change is made or a policy taken out or something added or whatever it is. It is an opportunity to meet, well, the whole week in Williamsburg is an opportunity to meet other school divisions, but to serve, in a room voting with, Franklin County is our neighbor. I've seen them every year for 8 years. And meet all the other people, and it's a good deal. There is no reason I've done it for 8 years. I volunteered the first year, and then it seemed to fall down the line. So I will say I will make the same speech I make every year. If someone else would like to do that, it is a good opportunity. It's educational. It's social down there, and it's more. You're more than welcome to step up and do it. If there's no one interested, I will be more than happy to do it again. So there you go, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. I think Mr. Lake has served us well in that role, and he always comes back and informs us and keeps us up to date of those proposed legal changes. And
Ever want to step on Mr. Lake's toes?
I don't think so either.
Position.
Is there anyone with a strong desire to take that joy from Mr. Lake?
I am actually very interested.
Mrs. White has expressed an interest. It seems that Mr. Lake would be eager to pass the torch.
And I'll be your alternate.
Okay. So do we need to take action on this, Mr. Edwards? Do we need to?
Yes, sir, you need to elect a delegate as well as a alternate.
So do we have a motion to?
I will make a motion for Ellen White to be our delegate and Miles Atkins to be our alternate delegate.
Second.
I don't think you got there fast enough. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Thank you for you all stepping up to that. So
Rookies of the
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you guys for your service. We appreciate it. And we look forward to hearing the report. I hope it's just as detailed as Mr. Lake's, Mrs. White. That brings us to the board member comment section of our evening. Any comments from board members? Let me do, can I first?
Yeah, go ahead.
No comments from board members? If I may, then, been doing a lot of reflecting. I'm appreciative for the citizen comments, always appreciative for those. I took some notes. I saw some of our staff taking notes on some of those things as well. And so I know sometimes it's hard in that position to not feel like you're heard because there's not a direct time to hear a response. But please know that you were heard and that we'll be working on those things. One of the things that someone said that kind of resonated with me is that, this is all about relationships. We as a board, our words and the work that we do have an impact. Students, staff, and the community, they all look to us. We have a responsibility to be setting a good example and to be working together to unite for the betterment of this community in how we, in the education that we provide for the students of this community. We operate as a board with the guidance from our superintendent, and I like to think of this as a team. He's up here with us, We work together closely with him, and we're appreciative for him. Sometimes we might disagree. Happened this evening. Take the book vote, for example. But ultimately, what we do is operate as a board. So we take action as a board. We might not all agree, but we need to, as a board, be able to stand behind that and stand behind each other and not present as divided to our community. Our community's hurting right now, not just our board, but in a lot of ways our community's hurting. And I think that we as a school board should be doing a better job of showing this community where we stand and showing this community that we, that we're here for the right reasons and to do what we can in the best interest of the children of this community. So with that being said, I wanted to, I know there have been some tough times. There's been a lot of back and forth. Dr. Lamanna mentioned some things about downtown. There's been a lot of stuff going on with downtown, and I think there have been a lot of efforts, maybe some in vain, to try to better that relationship and try to make that a little bit more cohesive. But I think that we as a board can do our part in terms of standing together in support of and making the decisions that we're authorized to do in support of this community. I did want to take a quick moment to just say that, a major part of that and a major part of why we even halfway look good is the gentleman down here, Dr. Savine. He has served us tremendously. And selflessly for 11 years. He works harder than anyone I know. I don't know where he comes up with the time to do everything that he does, but he has served this community in amazing ways. And this school division has come a long way in the past 11 years. And he's got some major milestones, which I'm not going to read off his accomplishments. I think who he is and what he does and where we are speak to that. But I would say that I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, Dr. Savine, for your service to this community and this school board. And I'm appreciative that we have you here. And I know that maybe you're not hearing that same message from the entire community, but I hope that you're hearing it from a majority of this board. So, and I don't know if any other board members would like to say anything.
Yeah.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure, thanks. I appreciate you sharing that and want to echo those comments. I know you and I have had many conversations around those lines and other board members and similar conversations with Dr. Savine as well. And just want to thank him for his commitment to Frederick County Schools and our students and staff and our community, and the work that he has engaged in to make FCPS what it is today, and excited about that work and the transformation that's occurred. I think any tenure of a superintendent speaks volumes just in the time that's there. So appreciate Dr. Savine and his commitment to students throughout the Commonwealth and especially in Frederick County.
Mr. Hester.
Dr. Savine, you know, I can't personally thank you enough for what you've done for Frederick County. You know, your tenure over 11 years has just been tremendous. You know, I've shared with you openly here and also in private, but I moved to county schools for the school system, and that's because of you. You've had my 110% support from the beginning. You know, just like Mr. Comstock said, we could sit here for probably a day and talk about all of your accomplishments that you have done to better this school system. This school system is not what it is without what the hard work and everything that you've done on a day in, day out basis. A lot of citizens don't realize how hard you work. You know, we know how hard you work. I wish you'd put down the phone when we were playing golf, but that's you. That's you. You're in the moment all the time and dealing with things, and I just appreciate you. My kids appreciate you. The teachers appreciate you. This community appreciates you. So there are no words that I could ever say to tell you how much you mean to us, and thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, Dr. Lamont and I, the list of accomplishments and accolades is long. A lot of you have heard about them. Dr. Lamont and I got to witness them over the last, for me, 10 and a half years. And Dr. Lamont was on the staff that selected Dr. Savine. So just to watch, you know, the progress, the accreditation issue, the on-time graduation scores, the math scores, the state standing, building 5 buildings, and you know, the list goes on and on. Inspire 2025, Bright Futures, the contributions to the community. My favorite subject, dual enrollment. My goodness, the opportunity that our young people are experiencing through dual enrollment. So we just went through 3 graduations, and we had 14, 16, I think, and 11, of high school graduates that got their associate's degree before they got their high school diploma. Their parents, for about $3,000, saved 2 years of college tuition through dual enrollment at the community college. And what Dr. Savine has done, he's brought the certification of dual enrollment instruction to our teachers. What happened before, when I first came on the board, there were many, many students, the really fast trackers and the really bright students wanted to take dual enrollment, but they didn't want to travel to the community college where they could take the classes because we didn't have the certified teachers here. They didn't want to take that hour and a half to take an hour class because of transportation. So what's happened is we have certified teachers now in our schools. About a month and a half ago when I brought the snapshot and I showed everybody from the community college. So that's huge. It's just huge. And so, again, a long list of accomplishments, and I'm very proud to say that I've been here to witness it.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I'm not going to make everybody listen to me whisper into the mic for very long. I haven't got to really get to know Dr. David Savine very well, but in the time that I've been here, some of the stuff that I've seen him do when we go out to Richmond, people move out of the way for this guy. They know what he brings. He steel sharpens steel. He's trained a lot of teachers, superintendents up and coming. And you definitely see a lot of respect for the guy whenever we're out in public. So I appreciate that, and I applaud you on your leadership skills.
All right, Mr. Lake?
Okay, we're going to do something a little different here. We usually do not have two closed sessions in a meeting. But, Mr. Vice Chair, I move that the County School Board of Frederick County, Virginia enter a closed session meeting for the following: to review and discuss individual personnel matters, which include the evaluation of the superintendent pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23711A.1, and I do so move.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We will go to closed session, and we'll be back shortly. Welcome back.
Mr. Vice Chair, I have a motion to reconvene from the closed session.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're back in session.
Motions coming out of closed session, Mr. Vice Chair. I move that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were discussed in the closed session, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Comstock?
Yes.
Mr. Hester?
Yes.
Mr. Adkins?
Yes.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
A second motion, Mr. Vice Chair. I move to accept superintendent's retirement effective June 30th, 2022, while waiving the 90-day notification required in the superintendent's employment agreement. Thank the superintendent for his exemplary service and commitment to the division, students, staff, and the entire Frederick County Public Schools community for more than a decade, and I do so move.
We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. Is there any discussion? Do we vote now, or can I give you a point of privilege, Dr. Savine? Or
Go ahead and vote, and I'll be glad to speak.
roll call vote?
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Comstock?
Yes.
Mr. Hester?
Yes.
Mr. Adkins?
Yes.
Mr. Monk?
Yes.
Point of privilege, Dr. Savine.
Yes, sir. Mr. Vice Chair, first of all, I want to say thank you to this board. You have united as one. I am proud to be superintendent of this board and certainly appreciate the kind words of support, genuine support that was extended earlier in today's meeting, and certainly to all of our citizens that have remained. I appreciate your support of this great school division. As you just heard, the board action approving my release. I'm now announcing my retirement effective at the end of this month. I'm very proud of the many things that have been accomplished during my tenure. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by an outstanding group of educational leaders in each of our schools and within our central office. Thanks to their support, the support of the school board members with whom I've worked and our many community partners, Frederick County Public Schools has made great progress since 2011. I'm confident that will continue well beyond my retirement. You're in good hands. I'm honored to have served as superintendent of Frederick County Public Schools over the past 11 years. During that time, I've been privileged to work with the school board to consistently achieve its top priorities. Certainly, our focus on enhancing our elementary literacy program, early childhood initiatives, in particular full-day kindergarten and preschool, the implementation of our tiered systems of support to successfully reduce achievement gaps, and development and to develop and implement our strategic plan, Inspire 2025, which you heard earlier today, the benefits of that. This plan focuses on strategic partnerships to provide deeper, more authentic learning experiences for every student. These are all shining moments that will benefit our community moving forward. Upon my arrival in 2011, we had nearly half of our elementary schools in focus status, representing the bottom 10% of elementary schools in Virginia, and one middle school that was in the bottom 5% of Virginia middle schools and had not been accredited for over a decade. We now have 100% of our schools fully accredited, and that once low-performing middle school now receives visits from educators from across the nation and is recognized for its engaging, student-focused learning environment. I want to thank each of you for your collaborative approach in strengthening our public schools to create a thriving and vibrant community. As I prepare to leave my current role, I want to thank all of our teachers, administrators, support staff who have diligently served our students during my tenure. I also want to thank our many community partners and the thousands of students and families we have served over the years for the encouragement, passion, and energy they provided to me as I worked each day to do what was best for our students. My apologies. I care about this community, and it will continue to thrive. I remain passionate about supporting students and making a positive impact on communities through public education. As I leave my current role, I do so with a great sense of pride in Frederick County Public Schools and this board, and the knowledge that my work is not done. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Savine. Are there any board member comments? I know we had board member comments earlier, but following that news, are there any board member comments before we adjourn?
Sure, Mr. Comstock. Just want to, again, thank you, Dr. Savine. I know I shared this earlier, but for your continued dedication to the students and families and staff of Frederick County Public Schools over the last decade plus. And, as you and I have discussed, and we've many times, that length of tenure of a superintendent is impressive in and of itself. And so thank you for your continued commitment to our staff and to this board and connectedness, and for the inspiration of Inspire 2025 as we continue to move forward, and wish you the best in future endeavors.
Thank you, Mr. Monk.
Dr. Savine, I already spoke earlier, but I just want to say thank you for your service to this community. We're a better place now because of you. And in the words of Angie White, we wish you well.
Mr. Comstock. Like Mr. Comstock, I said my piece earlier, but I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Your work is not done either. And Frederick County Public Schools has a very bright future. And I know we have a board that is committed to advocating for our students. You have team members that certainly you heard the report from Dr. Angelo. Our focus on innovation. There's a reason why some of the highest performing, most innovative school divisions are coming to Frederick to see how we're truly engaging students in authentic learning experiences. So that doesn't happen in a random manner. It's been very intentional, and we've been fortunate to have a board that really empowers and supports our teachers in order to create that special culture. So thank you.
Any other comments or motions, Mr. Lay?
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.